Hey, how's everybody doing? This is Rockson, and I am talking to you from New York City. So, a little bit about my TCK, CCK background. My father is a diplomat, so I grew up in four different continents and five different countries. Naturally, my passport country says I'm Nigerian, but I'm actually someone who identifies as a world citizen, just because it's tough for me to say I only am Nigerian or I only am a citizen of this. So I was born in Lagos, Nigeria. Then I moved to Sweden after a year for 2 years. And then came back to complete elementary school in Nigeria before going back or before heading to Burkina Faso in West Africa for pretty much my middle school years and freshman year of high school. And then I then subsequently came back to finish high school in Nigeria. And then my dad told me, "Hey, Tayo, you're moving to Vietnam." So that was an interesting adventure. I went there, and then from Vietnam, I went on to college in Virginia. And then in Virginia, it was this time where I would go back and forth between Virginia and Vietnam. And then it became back and forth between Virginia and Lagos, Nigeria. And then it became a little more time in Virginia, less time in Nigeria. And then I moved to New York City, and now now New York City is where I've been for the last 2 years, but I've also been going back and forth. So that, in a nutshell, is my TCK story. This month's theme is really important to me because I feel like we are at a critical point in the world right now where a lot of people are using change to create barriers. I come from a country in Nigeria where people use religion and different tribes to limit or blind them from actually seeing the potential of what other people could be. And so being, the whole idea of this conference is really important to me because I really want us to really break down what I call the Berlin Walls. I think, the Berlin Walls, as much as they did between East and West Germany, they caused this barrier between two different mindsets. And I feel like that does us a disservice. I feel like us as TCKs need to position ourselves as these bridges between different cultures, as well as people that can foster empathy. So I really want to talk about the different ways we can do that, and I'll do that, and I'll walk you through that through what I like to call the DBCs. But why these themes are important to me and why it's very necessary. I feel it's because I feel like in order for us to build the right next set of global leaders, we need to have the right mindsets. And that starts with an understanding what different cultures are, and then a need for empathy and just overall awareness about what our actions actually do. So it's very important for me because I feel like it has huge implications on who our leaders can be and who our leaders will be. So hopefully you find what I'm saying interesting, and we can go on from there. So the term TCK, you hear it a lot. What is it? It's basically an acronym for Third Culture Kids. But what exactly is TCK? I found out the word in my 20s, and I'm still in my 20s, so what am I saying? But I found out the word about a few years ago. But before that, I had come to the terms of the fact that I was a global citizen. So when people always ask me, how did you become comfortable who you are? It was just me just accepting it that I identify with several cultures. I didn't know there was a term for it at the point, but I knew that being a global citizen was something that I could say I am, because I definitely resonate with a lot of few things. For example, when I would go back to Nigeria, people would say I'm not Nigerian enough. And if I'm here, I'm perceived as African American because of the way I sound. But then sometimes even within the African American community, you can hear things like people saying, well, you're not African American enough, or you're not black enough. And that constant just hopping around of who are you, who am I, why is my accent different, why don't I resonate with this, was something that I just came to realize, and that I would never be able to please or satisfy one group if I chose to cater to them, and that I really need to understand who I was as a person. And who I was as a person was someone that could switch accents and go to a Nigerian accent and then say, "Hey, how are you?" and go on to a British accent, because by saying literally instead of literally, as I normally say. And someone who loved the Premiership football, someone who loved the NFL football, and someone who could constantly navigate between cultures. And then once I decided that was who I was going to be, I at the time used to call myself a global citizen. I said, you know what, that's fine, because all that matters is you being happy with who you are. And then once you've reached that point, nothing anyone can say or does say will have as much power on you, unless you give it to them. So I think the term TCK is very important. And I also think global citizen can be synonymous, just in the sense that as a global citizen, you identify with several cultures. As a TCK, you identify with several cultures. I just think it's a matter of semantics. So to me, TCK and global citizen are pretty much synonyms. So whichever one you choose to identify yourself as, I think is fine. I would say the only thing that you should really focus on is building that self-awareness and just being comfortable who you are. Okay, so I just broke down why I think TCK and global citizens are synonyms. But the reason why it's very important for us, I think, as people in global transition, which is what we all are, we constantly in transition, I think we have much more, we have a lot of power to make an impact than we do realize. I feel like by embracing the global identity, we can make an impact. And I'm going to walk you through 3 ways that I talked about earlier. And I like to call them the DBCs. These are what I say, the DBCs of making a global impact in today's world. So the first thing as a TCK that you need to understand is that you should defeat the supposed to syndrome. Now, what is the supposed to syndrome? The supposed to syndrome is the idea that you're supposed to be a certain way because a certain tradition tells you that that's how you're supposed to be. But the problem with ascribing to that mindset is that it limits the potential of who you can be, because there is no pre-described way of something that you should be. Someone, as a TCK, one of the things you realize is that you're placed in places without your permission, and then you have to move. And what happens is that you knowingly or unknowingly, you start to adapt to certain cultures, and you gravitate to certain things, and you have certain habits, and then some adaptability changes. So I feel like as a third culture kid, you have to defeat that supposed to syndrome, because a lot of times I do a lot of TCKs and third culture kids, and one of the things that constantly comes up is the identity crisis issue. We all went through it. I went through it. I certainly did, and it was an interesting point in my life. But one of the ways that I was able to break through from that was understand that I wasn't supposed to be anyway. And the identity crisis comes because you see your friends doing a certain thing, and you wish you could be like them, and you don't fit in. But the thing that if you can get past that mindset of thinking like you're supposed to be that way, it becomes a lot, it's not going to be easy, but it becomes a lot easier to break through. And the thing with defeating the supposed to syndrome is that as you grow older, and this is certainly from experience, I'm telling you, you start to realize that all those experiences are very, very necessary for who you become, because they teach you how to become stronger mentally and how to be able to adapt. As the discomfort that you're constantly going through while dealing with your identity crisis is something that's definitely going to come into play further down the line, whether it's an office environment when you're dealing with different departments in the office, if it's accounting or marketing, people with different personalities, because you realize that, wow, I've been in this situation before where I didn't fit in, and I pushed through, and now I understand it. So I feel like as TCKs, if you're able to push through and understand that this difficult period that you're going through as an identity crisis is necessary, you'll be able to realize that that mindset actually helps you become more open-minded and actually increases your empathy. Now, so that's the D, defeating supposed to syndrome. B, like I said earlier, is breaking down the Berlin Walls that exist today. We have a problem in our society today, and that's racism, and that's stereotypes, and that's people that are unable to accept change, and because of this inability to accept change, they just cause chaos, whether it's bombings or whether it's saying insensitive things, right? So in order to break down the Berlin Walls, your nature is I feel like TCKs are unintentional teachers, unintentional ambassadors. And just by helping someone in a simple sentence by saying, hey, it's great that you say that, and I can see how you might think Africa is a country, but it actually is 55 countries. There are over 50 countries there, and not everybody speaks, in the same way the media portrays it. But it's, maybe that was something the media portrayed, but maybe this is something that you can start to become more aware of. Just gently positioning and framing it and telling people like this is not how certain things are goes a long way. and in educating the world as to what the true state of affairs are. And the reason why I say stereotypes are a Berlin Wall today is because they're simply, in my opinion, the laziest ways to understand culture. And the reason why they are is that they make assumptions on who you are and what you do without actually knowing who you are and what you do. And you think about it, you just because someone looks a certain way or act or has a certain shade doesn't necessarily mean that they act that same way. That's a very, very simplistic way of thinking. And as a TCK, you've been afforded the mindset of seeing that that's not true. So I think you can break down the Berlin walls that exist today. And C's connect. We live in a digital world today. 15 years ago, we didn't have the internet doing what it can do now. I mean, some of the biggest companies don't have any physical properties. Facebook doesn't. Airbnb doesn't. Lyft or just what do you call Uber? They don't have physical things. They just have services that they run, and now they're running this business. So as TCKs, I think just that natural ability that we have to be able to connect across different cultures can be applied into the digital format. And there's so many tools that allow you to do that. You can express your voice through writing in a blog format. Maybe that would help you actually come to find your voice. You can do it through podcasting. I do both. I blog and I podcast. You can also create courses on cross-cultural learning. If you want to be that teacher and offer your services, you can be that consultant in an online format to many companies, because they do look for people that can help deal with different cultures. And then, you can find your way in with the internet that you couldn't find before. So I would say take advantage of that natural gift that you have and just use it. Use it. And use the internet to let you connect to a lot of people. So DBC, defeat the supposed to syndrome, break down the Berlin walls, and connect in the digital world that we live in today.